See, I told you it was gonna get better. All you had to do is be patient and wait for the second episode. It's better, right? Right? Man, my one-legged dog could write better scripts. What the hell is this Disney crap? Jon Favreau is letting me down. Guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben, and here is my review of the second episode of the Book of Boba Fett, very appropriately labeled The Tribes of Tatooine. Now, full spoiler alert. Before we start talking about this episode, please be warned, I'll be talking about the story, the characters, the whole thing. If you guys don't want to hear about this, go watch the episode first, come back, drop your comments in the video section below, and we'll get the discussion going, and I'll get the kind of your thoughts and what you felt about this episode. I'm not even going to hide my excitement. I loved this episode, guys. I'm going to state it right from the beginning. Was it a perfect episode? No. I still feel there's a couple of things, just a few minor kinks they need to iron out, but otherwise a much stronger episode, and I'm happy to say that it is very much a continuation of the first episode that Robert Rodriguez has established in the beginning, and this is sort of where my reservations were at first. I said, well, hold on a second, let's not judge the first episode that much, because Robert Rodriguez had a tall order to fill. Like, he had to establish and set up a whole deal of things in order for the story to begin taking place in the second episode. And I think now in retrospect, he did an admirable job of putting all the pieces on the chessboard, and now the second director is taking it away, and now he's really starting to play in the sandbox. So, right from the beginning, let's talk about this huge, beautiful panoramic shot of the Jabba's palace. It feels and looks straight out of Return of the Jedi. The show looks like it was filmed right next to the original trilogy. Every little detail looks right. When Fennec Shand is leading that prisoner into the palace, and you look at that hallway, and the gate is slowly rising up. For a second, I was like, hold on a second, am I watching the right thing? It looks literally like the beginning of the Return of the Jedi, and I love it. But also in this first scene is where I have the most problems with this particular episode. So they bring this prisoner, and they start interrogating them. And Boba Fett says, look, I spared your life, and now you're going to tell me everything that I want to know about who hired you, right? Why did you want to kill me? And right there, it feels a little bit off, because the droid is basically hyping this Nightwind crime syndicate, or this assassin guild, as somebody who's truly special. Look, he's not going to talk. This guy's like top tier assassin. You're not going to get any information out of him. And the second thing that the Boba Fett does with Fennec Shand, they drop him into the Sarlacc pit. For a second there, I thought I'm going to see a Sarlacc. I'm like, hold on a second. They kind of had a baby Sarlacc in the Bad Batch television show, right? Bib Fortuna is securing one. So I'm wondering what's going to happen here. Obviously, there is no Sarlacc there, but this assassin starts spilling his guts right away. And it kind of demeans what they tried to establish just a second ago, saying that this Nightwind Assassin's Guild is just so badass, everybody should be afraid of it, including Boba Fett. And they retrace their steps and just completely alter the thing and just say this guy becomes a nobody. Like, oh, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. It just didn't vibe. It didn't feel right. I'm like, either kill the guy or make him this coward who is not, what he seems in the beginning. That didn't work for me as well. But I would say this is where most of the issues I have with this episode is in regards to the first portion where we are in Mos Eisley. Then we're back to this Major Domo. As Boba Fett is entering the mayor's building, he says, look, I'm here, I'm Boba Fett, and I'm here to see the mayor. And I'm not digging that clerk standing there behind, like, you're not on the list. I'm like, Boba Fett is not going to stand there or present himself. He's just going to walk right through this guy like a tank. And he's standing there, and they're trying to make light of the situation. That just didn't feel right. It took me out of a Star Wars experience, and it felt like something else. And enter the Major Domo as well, which, once again, it's not the actor's fault. I think the actor is performing well there. But just in terms of directing, that particular Twi'lek is taking me out of the Star Wars experience. He doesn't feel right. It's either his accent. I can't put my finger on it. It's either his accent or whatever the performance style that the directors picked for him. It's not jiving. But the Thorian itself, I can't figure out whether it's a male or a female. It looks like a female because it's kind of a smaller for an Ithorian body frame. But the Ithorian I felt was very cool, and I really loved the voice, and I enjoyed that they put a translator there next to his mouthpiece. That's how the Ithorians generally talk in the Star Wars lore, so they don't have to do subtitles every time when you have an alien species on screen. That was cool. I like the synthesized voice, and I like the little interaction. Suddenly, things got a little bit more tense. Boba Fett is like, hey, yeah, I am taking that money, but it's not for a bounty. I don't do bounties anymore. I'm not this like menial a task performer anymore. Like I don't work for a bit fortuna. You are paying me this money as a tribute. But then the Ithorian has something back to throw at Boba Fett. He said, like, before you threaten me, you best find out where this Night Wind Assassins Guild, why they tried to kill you. I might have information that might be valuable to you, and that's what I traded, information. That little exchange was pretty cool. As soon as Boba Fett walks outside, another interesting thing happens, which I did like. We have the twins, obviously being carried by their slave human owners. We have two Hutt cousins of Jabba the Hutt. You could sort of tell that they are CGI. I would like to say they are, but they were immaculately well done. I will take a look at behind the scenes when, you know, that comes out on Disney Plus, but I gotta say, they were so well done. They sounded right. They moved right. The facial proportions were right. When Hutts are generally portrayed in the comic books or in artwork in general, they all have very distinct and different features. And you could tell right away that the other ones, like from Nal Hota or Nar Shaddaa, they look different from Jabba the Hutt. These two twins, because of their, like, the cut of their mouth or where their eyes are positioned, you could tell there's some kind of, like, they're kin next to Jabba the Hutt. They're his cousins. They're related by blood. And even that attention to detail, I guess that the mold of the Jabba the Hutt's face sculpt is very, very similar to these two guys. Again, they killed it. They knocked it out of the park. And of course, we have the Black Chrysanthemum, the Wookiee from the Darth Vader 2015 comic book. That was his first appearance there in this comic book. And he's showing up here. He has one of the major roles as a bounty hunter slash mercenary that we see in the comics. And for him to come out there was like, okay, he's here. It was just a bit underwhelming because we didn't get enough action with him, but I understand why they did it, because they're setting things up. They want to build that hype. It's like, hey, look who's in the show here, but you're going to have to wait and see what he's up to, what he's going to do in terms of either story or action. But it was nice to see him, and I'm pretty sure Star Wars comic book fans were right there with me saying like, hey, is Aphra going to be in here in this show as well? Why is he here? Are we going to see Aphra's assassin droids? So they're now merging the new Star Wars canon comic books and show together, and I applaud them. That was very well done, and it already kind of gives us a promise of what's to come next. A little sip of water here. We are talking about Tatooine, right? And I'm glad that the episode didn't spend too much time in Mos Eisley, because once again, it's where I find the most problems, and mostly they relate to dialogues, that some of the dialogues just don't click, don't feel right. But now we go back to the past. Boba Fett is in his back to tank, he's healing, and we are told a parallel story of how Boba Fett comes onto his own and becomes a valued tribesman of the Tuscan Raiders. And once again, this is very appropriately labeled episode, because it's basically Dances with Wolves, right? It's Boba Fett going native, so to speak. He is rescued by this tribe, but now they're seeing something. He's a warrior. He's a seasoned warrior, and there's something to him, and Tuscans recognize that, and they kind of groomed him for their tribe. They might extract some value from him, because that's what you do if you survive in the dunes of Tatooine. You use every available resource to survive. So it was no surprise that they rescued him, and there's no surprise that they would train him. I didn't question that for a moment, because that's what Tuscans do. They see strength, they recognize it. It's like, hey, he's better be part of us rather than we leave him like to die here in the desert. And we see that Boba Fett is slowly earning his rank. He is training with a Gaddafi stick or Gaffy stick. And it's something that we saw in the Boba Fett reveal in the Mandalorian show. And my question was, well, how does he get this stick? Because when I do my lore videos, and I did one of the lore videos on the Tuscans, and I was like researching, inside the Wookiee encyclopedia and learning about these tribes and cultures, those gaffy sticks are very important to them. It's part of their tradition, it's part of their culture. And to see Boba Fett rocking those, plus the Tuscan rifle in the Mandalorian show, I was like, so what does he do? Does he like kill one of the Tuscans just to get his way, find his way out of it? But no, hold on a second. He's also rocking these kind of like drapes around him. So what's happening there? There's a story happening. And I'm happy that they are spending their time and showing us that Boba Fett is bonding with these peoples and he's learning their customs and tradition. And I'm wondering when they're doing those katas and Boba Fett is training, how much of that was Tamuera Morrison's influence on the show in general. Because obviously when they filmed the Mandalorian show where Boba Fett comes out of that slave run and he just starts kicking ass on Tython, Tamuera Morrison choreographed a lot of those fights. And I'm wondering how much influence he had on this show, because the Gaddafi stick and the dance later on that I will discuss is heavily influenced by Samoan culture, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is wonderful, where a real world culture is kind of like transitioning and making its way into a sci-fi show. That was just so cool to watch. And I gotta say that in terms of action, if me and the boys at the Star Wars on High and Star Wars Complete, we discussed the first episode, we all find out that the action was a little bit lacking and a lot of it had to do with choreography. I'm happy to say that in this episode, everything felt right. The fights or training sessions were filmed right. You saw them in the wide shots. You saw Tamuera Morrison in full height, just performing those moves. It was clear, it was easy to read, and it was exciting. It was fun. Especially that female Tuscan. I almost want to unveil her face just to see who is that. I really hope it's not Fennec Shand. I hope it's another, it's actual person behind there, because we don't know what the Tuscans are supposed to look like. Supposedly encyclopedias tell us that they have these like snout-like faces, almost rodent or cat-like feline features. It's a mix in between. But George Lucas was adamant about never showing their faces, and I don't suppose we're going to see there. But seeing that female in action and how she's demonstrating patience, training Boba Fett, that felt right, that felt good, and it made me want to find out more about that character. And the next thing I really enjoyed is, of course, spending more time with the Tuscan culture and Boba Fett learning their sign language, and he's communicating with them in that way. Again, harkening back to Dances with Wolves, right, when Kevin Costner's character is interacting with Native Americans. He's learning first by sign language, and then he draws things on the ground, and then slowly he adapts and he starts learning the language. And then, of course, something crazy happens. The tribe is being attacked. We have these, what I'm going to call spice train. The Pike's spice train is reversing the Dune Sea and is just taking unprovoked shots at the tribe, because the tribe didn't seem like it wanted to attack, but the train itself is controlled by these Pikes, these gangsters. They don't care, and they attack the tribe. And I felt, now in the second episode, I feel like I'm part of these Tuscans, and I feel for them, and they're not the same Tuscans that we saw in A New Hope that attacked Luke for no reason. Obviously, they're like these savage tribes that just are willing to kill everybody. But here, these people, they seem to be like, this is their ancestral home, this is their territory, and now this technological beast is passing through. And for those of you guys who are not aware, Tuscans abhor any sort of technology. For those of you who play the Knights of the Old Republic game, will also remember this. They don't like technology, and they will basically destroy everything in sight. And when this train is passing, they're just standing there. And when their beasts are being killed, when their tribesmen are being killed, what other choice do they have but to retaliate? And now they formulate a plan, right? What they want to do is take away this train from the Pikes. These are the aliens that we saw originally in the Clone Wars show in Season 5. And once again, the Book of Boba Fett is tying these loose ends and connecting the Star Wars universe in the way that it should. It's telling us that it's part of this one great storytelling. So Boba Fett secures the speeder bikes. He goes into this cantina or bar, and he basically runs through the whole gang, and he gets the bikes. And that was basically that scene there, and the moment that we saw the train tells us that this is a Western show, right? This is a space opera, a space saga, but also has a lot of Westerner vibes to it. actually Star Wars, the original film, the way that it was advertised in Soviet Union. I wasn't even born back then when it came out, but as I later discovered, I watched it in Russian in the 80s. But Star Wars was actually marketed in Russia as a space western for a good reason. I mean, look at the Han Solo in Episode 4. He looks like a gunslinger. And this show is reinforcing that idea. We have the train heist. We have the bar fight, which is basically what westerns had. That's like staples of that genre. And anyway, he gets the bikes, he brings them there, and I thought immediately we're going to jump into the action where they're going to be, jumping the train. But not yet. Now Boba Fett is actually training them to use those bikes. This is gold, guys. This is where I wanted the show to be. To hit pause for a second. To not rush into the thrills or whatever was advertised in the commercial, but show us some interaction. This is a very human interaction. He's showing them how to do it. We see them try and fail many times. This is where storytelling takes place. It doesn't need Shakespearean dialogues. It doesn't need to be as intense as Schindler's List. It's just basic interaction that keeps building the world and keeps telling us why Boba Fett is part of them, why they start valuing him later on. I really, really enjoyed that. That particular trick where one of the Tuscans starts driving and he goes backwards. That little joke didn't land for me, but I understand why it was there. Hopefully, it provided some funny moments for the rest of you guys. But the rest of the scene was just dope. And that final jump that the Tuscan makes and he finally lands on Boba Fett's bike, that was really well done. And not for a second you felt like that scene was done in CGI, like it's some kind of effect. It felt so real. The dust trail picking up after those bikes. And then we get to the actual taking over the train. They strategize. They position the spotter. The kid is there to signal with the little mirror. The first run happens, the first attack. They take a couple of pot shots. And then the second a group of Tuscans starts fighting later. And that's when the bikes come from the dune. They were obstructed by view. And now they're jumping in. And we're introduced to one of the most glorious action sequences in recent Star Wars. I mean, the Solo movie, a lot of fans that skipped out on that in theaters and watched it later, on Disney Plus, on their Blu-rays, were like, hey man, it actually had pretty dope action, especially with that train and with the pirates. I would say this scene is even better. I loved a Solo movie from the beginning to end, but here it felt so kinetic, so right, and it was procedural. It wasn't just like, hey, we're jumping the train, that's it, we took over. It's procedural. They jump. A couple of Tuscans don't make it. They die. Then they start slowly attacking the pikes, drawing them out of those windows and killing them. And then the female, right, the badass, she runs through them like on the lower tier. She opens the hatch from the top and she dispatches it through. And when Boba Fett gets to the actual cabin, we see this really fun looking spider droid. He's like, bah, 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 bah. He's trying to control it. And Boba Fett says, stop it. And this one jumps out and then he crawls out almost like General Grievous when he was like being disarmed by Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's like, papa, papa. He turns into the spider in the Clone Wars show. He crawls out. That was really, really funny. I love that droid. I hope we get to see more of him. Maybe he even finds his ways into the Jabba's palace. So the attack was completely amazing. And I was surprised that Boba Fett decided not to kill the Pikes, but make a deal out of him, which once again shows that strategic mind. Once again, guys, this is not going to be Sopranos level of criminal drama, but at least we see Boba Fett planning ahead. He's like, hey, let me not completely destroy any sort of hope for a business arrangement with the Pikes, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab the train. I'm going to give the resources to the Tuscans, get them on my side, because later on, already Boba Fett is making moves here that's like, hey, I'm going to use Tuscans later on. Guys, mark my words, Tuscan Raiders will back Boba Fett up at one point or another. But he's also making deals with the Pikes. He's like, hey, you're going to walk back home, most likely in this direction. You're going to walk single file, and then you're going to use the only resource that the Tuscans have, so you get to feel what it's like to survive in this desert. Now this is the sovereign place, which is ancestral home to these Tuscan tribe, and you're going to have to pay tribute if you want to transport your goods through it. And I thought that the episode is going to end here. Sorry, guys. I thought, okay, this is a pretty decent place to stop the episode. I got enough of what I wanted out of this episode. I love it. I'm gonna record my review, but it continues, and we're graced with so far my favorite episode in either the entire Mandalorian show so far or what we have seen in the Book of Boba Fett, the ritual, right? We see Boba Fett's initiation. We see Tuscan lore and culture. We see their traditions. We see something again that harkens back to the tribe, Native American tribes and the cultures of the world, what used to be called the primitive cultures of the world. They all have the initiation ritual that always has to deal with some kind of psychotropic plants or some kind of like shock element where a person is completely, out of the reality, and they're going on this dream journey to find themselves, to find their focus again. And the lizard thing was really, really cool. They sprinkle a little bit of spice into his face, and that lizard crawls into his brain. It was like, a little off-putting, very effectively done. And then we see Boba Fett traversing the desert to find his gaffy stick, basically, this is his badge, man. This is like him becoming the general. This is him saying, I am worthy. It was so well done. I really enjoyed it. And once again, the going back to the Star Wars prequels and seeing the Slave One leaving Camino, and we see the young actor portraying young Boba Fett. Thank God they didn't go do a close-up. Thank God that we didn't see a full CGI face. They did just enough to look completely identical from the Attack of the Clones, the young Boba Fett there. Man, it was well done. And it was so impactful, and I felt that it reinforced Boba Fett's character. It wasn't done there just for cheap nostalgia. I don't believe that for a second. It had a purpose there, it had a place, and then we're back to reality, and Boba Fett gets to construct his own Gaddafi stick. And later, the dance and the drumming, the music kicks in. Again, this was, if the first episode, the musical score felt a little bit messy all over the place, here they brought it home with the drumming, and Boba Fett is there. At first, it looked like it was going to be a duel, but then it turns into this formal dance, and now Boba Fett looks official in that Tuscan drapery, and he's dancing. What a wonderful way to conclude the episode. I can honestly say I am hyped for the show. I was keeping my reservations. I'm still gonna, watch every episode and see what it offers episode by episode. I'm not going to put a lot of stress on all of these filmmakers and say, well, now you have to deliver. Now you have to give me an Oscar-worthy, show. Episode by episode. Let's see how it goes. Episode one felt a little bit slow. The acting, the storytelling didn't quite fit for me. Even though the content itself of the story was good, I didn't enjoy the delivery as much. Here, it started off just a little bit rough in the beginning, but then became really, really, really good. I really enjoyed it, guys. Once again, I'm not giving this episode a score. I'm basically going to review the entire show and give the whole show score at the end. Hopefully other episodes will be as good as this, and I'm really, really hoping the Black Wookiee is going to kick some major ass in the show. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to read what you guys thought of this episode, and let's compare notes and see if you enjoyed it as much as I. And I'll see you guys next week with the review of the third episode. Take care.